let's get on together with today's Business Morning live from Abuja, Nigeria's political capital. I am Bosin. It's nice to have everyone here, and let's get started with some of the stories, one or two key stories in Nigeria's energy sector making the headlines as we speak. The Niger Delta militants, one of the group, the Niger Delta Avengers, has issued a fresh warning strike to the Nigerian authorities. Say they will resume activities of blowing up facilities in the Niger Delta offshore in the next few days. That's what they said on their website, and that's been widely reported today. This is one news that Nigerian authorities will be taking very seriously. The Nigerian government has continued with the amnesty program for the Niger Delta militants, but now some of the militants says they'll be back in business. It's not very sure why they are threatening Nigeria's oil production at this point in time. The Avengers says the offshore oil and gas facilities attacks will be on the deep sea operations of the multinationals of the Bonga platform. Bonga is one of Nigeria's crude oil that Nigeria produces. 7 of them are Agbami. Also, they mentioned that the EA and the Akpo fields operated by Britannia, Shell, Chevron, Brazil, Petrobras, and Nigeria's Petro. And that's what the militants have pulled out. It's been in the news as we speak, and the authorities will be looking into this very quickly. Nigeria currently produces about 2.2 million barrels per day. Of course, the quota with the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries is about 1.8 million barrels per day. If you add condensate to about 2.2 million barrels. So the analysts and everyone will be looking at how this will impact Nigeria if these Niger Delta Avengers make good their threat to resume hostilities within the Niger Delta Basin. Offshore facilities, they said. Now, that's that's upstream. Let's come downstream and still on the refineries. Nigeria's State Oil Corporation, called the NNPC, says the original builders of the Port Harcourt, Warri, and Kaduna refineries are now being engaged to return those facilities to about 90% of capacity before the end of 2019. The 4 refineries, 2 in Port Harcourt, 1 in Warri, and the other one in Kaduna, had installed capacity of about 445,000 barrels per day combined for the 4 facilities, but they're been running suboptimally, draining the resources of the Nigerian National Petroleum Corporation. Now, the state oil firm says the new reform model, which will be used with the original builders, which include Total and Shell, will make sure that the Nigerian government has little or no funding into it, which is called near zero reliance on federal government funds to revamp those facilities. Meantime, the Dangote Refinery, the first independent and the largest on the African continent, and will be one of the biggest around the world. This is what Aliko Dangote says a few days ago in that exclusive interview with Channel Television, that the final technical work on the Dangote Lagos Refinery of the 650,000 barrels per day will be completed by the end of 2018. That's the technical part of it. The technical work. Then Aliko says that the final testing of all the coupled facilities will be done in 2019. Remember, those facilities, as you may know if you know the business of refineries very well, there are different parts which have been built, and they would eventually be coupled together to form a single refinery, and then they will have to be tested separately. Then when they're finally coupled together, will still have to be tested as a single entity, a refinery, and then the production rollout will be in the first quarter of 2020. That's just about bringing in the private sector side and building the largest refinery in Nigeria into the conversation. So we're going to have a little bit more about the latest Niger Delta warnings and what it means for both the upstream and the downstream business in Nigeria later on the program in the next couple of minutes. But first, let's take a quick look at the markets as we find. I've had it yesterday. The Nigerian stock market continued to pace ahead nearly 2% on the composite index. That takes us into the deep end of the 44,000. We're likely to see 45,000 if this trajectory is continued over the next two sessions, today and tomorrow, Friday. Then that takes us effectively to the third week in January. They were looking at the final week of the month and the first month of the new year next week. But that's where the numbers were. We crossed a threshold of a new equity cap. That's 16 trillion naira. That's the highest we've got in 10 years. It was around this time in 2008 that the market crossed the 1 trillion from 15 to 16. And so far, if you look at this year, since January the 2nd, when we started 2018, the market is now north of 2 trillion in terms of value added to the markets, to the equities capitalization. Look at yesterday. We came back strongly in terms of total volume. That's 960.75. That's about 12.52 billion naira. That's north of about 30 million US dollars. And in transaction, in terms of deals, we're about 1,500, much better than Tuesday. Those are the Wednesday's numbers you see there on your TV screen, 8,866. Take a look at the 5 sectors with me. And let's just roll that in, and you can see how the 5 sectors were almost all in green, with the exception of the consumer goods. The banks continue to hold their territory, 0.5%. Green shoot. Consumer goods lost 0.64%. Industrial goods were better by 4.42%. Insurance, 1.80% on the counter. We were talking to the insurance chief here from Abuja studios this morning to take us through the new guidelines for the micro insurance subsector that NICOM is pursuing in the new year. I'm sure if you're in the news, you already know that the insurance regulator has reduced the minimum regulatory capital for micro insurers from 150 million to 40 million naira. We're going to hear from Nigeria's insurance regulator on the program today. Oil and gas, 1.79% in the green. So that takes us to the oil and gas, listed oil and gas. And these were folks who were getting the stick side of the carrot towards the